Now then, welcome back to another video. So this is part 3 of the wiring video, I think, on my engine conversion project on the Mini. Still lots to do. So if you watched the last episode, you'll have seen I've been routing all the engine control wiring, all the different sensors. I've put the main wiring harness through the bulkhead, which is going to be hidden by the speedo. So I'm taking a step back from that now and just going to look at the power distribution, shall we say. So it did occur to me that I need to sort it out probably first before I go any further. So for those who don't know, classic Minis have a boot rear mounted battery, and they'll have a main power line coming to the front. Obviously I want to keep that existing position for the battery. There's no room for a battery up here, so I'm going to redo the power line going from the front to the back, and a few little mods to make it work with this engine. So that's what this video is about. Hope you enjoy. So the first thing I've done is I've mounted this positive terminal here on the bulkhead. So I did some research. A lot of guys who do they move their battery from the front to the rear of the car for whatever reason. Often they'll install one of these right at the front, so this almost becomes like what was the positive terminal for your battery, but it's now obviously located up here. So I've mounted this on here, and one of the reasons I've done that is it gives me a nice engine bay power source for the rest of the wiring. Also, I'm going to install this here, which is, find the thing, which is an isolator switch, just for a bit of added safety and security. Okay, so at any one point I can completely isolate any power to the engine, disconnect the battery, but also I can this key can be removed, and it adds a little bit of security as well. And into the engine bay. My thinking is I'm going to mount it here, just under the dash. Okay, so what I've done, go out again. So I'm going to route a power line going from my new terminal here through this hole here into the bulkhead, and then that's gonna, you can just see it poking through there, the red cable. That's gonna come down underneath the dash, and that's gonna connect to the isolator switch here. And then I'm going to take a cable from there, and I'm going to lay the power cable underneath what would be underneath the carpet once the carpet's in, through inside the car into the boot. Now, those who know, classic Minis, typically the power cable actually goes from the engine bay underneath the car to the battery, and it's mounted underneath, which is fine, but I think personally I'm going to prefer this solution because I don't like the idea of a power line under the car that can get hit by rocks and stuff like that and scrape because my car's lowered and stuff like that, and potentially short out on the body of the car. It seems like a bit of a hazard, so I think I'm going to prefer this solution, so it's going to be nice and safe inside the cabin. Got the isolator switch here on my bench, so I'm going to make a very simple mounting bracket. So it's going to be an L-shaped bracket that'll pick up with these holes here, and then bracket out there, and then I shall drill some holes in the dash sheet metal, maybe put some riv nuts, and then that'll mount to that. And bish bash bosh, isolator switch mounted. Let's get to it.
Drowning deep in my sea of loathing, broken your serpentine. Will you give it to me? It seems what's left of my human side is slowly changing in me. Will you give it to me? Looking at my own reflection when suddenly
chaps. Quick and easy bracket created. Needs a bit of tidying up, edges and a bit of paint, but that's my plan. Something around there. There's a nice sheet metal lip under there, which I think should be just enough sheet metal to 2 holes with nuts. Not like that. Okay, cool. Let's get this finished. All mounted up. Seems pretty sturdy. 2 riv nuts connected to that. Give it a test. Engine isolated. Engine active. Cool beans. Right, give this a bit of coat of paint, I think. Bracket all painted, installed. And I've done my first bit of positive wire going from my positive black on the bulkhead to this side of the switch. So I'm going to do the next one. So I'm going to put the 10mm spade connection on there and start laying the cable. Like I said earlier, my plan is to lay it underneath the carpet, so rather than underneath the car. So I'm going to go across to here, and I'm going to utilise some of these existing what do you call it, brackets that retain the carpet and other things. So I'm going to see if I can use that again just to hold the cable, and then bring it down here. It's going to follow, I think, the inner sill back to the boot. Okay, now that I've done the power line there to the engine bay, I'm going to do the earth. So the Mini has a rear mounted battery which is grounded to the chassis in the boot, so I've got to complete that circuit. So I've got to offer a ground from the engine block to the chassis. That way anything that's using the engine as an earth, like starter mode and stuff like that, they've got that continuity. So what I've done, I think from the right, the standard Mini A series earthing strap is to the top of the engine steady, which is around here. That I've chopped off to make room for the ITB, so I can't use it anymore. So I think I'm going to use this area here. So I've just drilled a hole, cleaned it up, and then I'm going to put an earth strap. I've taken one of the gearbox bell housing bolts out there, which obviously will connect the bell housing to the engine block with the bolt going through it. So I'm going to put a strap from that point to this point. Okay, it's a nice, obviously very thick, sturdy part of the chassis. It's not no thin sheet metal, so it should provide a good earth strap. Let's get that going.
It's been on the tractor, ain't seen Becky all week. Somebody said they seen them headed down to the creek. Farmer Johnson's daughters just pulled up in a Jeep. Man, he knows how to grow them, if you know what I mean. Oh, Dave's getting loud, but he don't mean no harm. We're just country boys and girls getting down on the farm. You can have a lot of fun in a New York minute, but there's some things you can't do inside those city limits.
Okay, earth strap installed. So to make sure it's good, I'm just going to do a quick continuity test. Got my multimeter set in continuity there. I've just wedged one of the leads underneath this screw on top of the cylinder head. So now this strap will be grounding the engine block and the cylinder head. So at this point here on the chassis, I should get an audible beep, which proves that my earth strap is working. Boom. Nice one. Good times. Now that's good. So I think I might just do another check from that point to the negative on the battery to make sure that's all good. But I consider that job done. Okay, next we've got the starter motor cable here. So I've taken this off the mica wiring loom. I'll try and reuse it. So this on the mica would go from positive side of the battery to the solenoid on the starter motor. So I'm going to route it down here. I'm going to use this connection again, save me doing another one. Route it down here. Obviously this is a bit too long, so I'm going to cut this down and put a one of these M10 spade connectors on here and get rid of this battery terminal clamp. That's going to go there. So a bit of recycling rather than doing a new one. There we go. Chop to size. M10 spade connector. Put on, or ring connector, what do you call it? Original on the other side. One custom starter motor cable. There we go. Starter motor installed. Starter motor cable installed. I think at some point I might get some cable mounts just to tie this up a little bit. But I think it's a good path at the moment. Okay. So referring to the Nissan Micra electrical wiring diagram for the starting and charging section. So I've now just done this. So next I think I might do the ignition line that activates the starter motor solenoid, so I can check it. So to do that I'll go from the positive, not on the battery, on my new positive port, to a fuse, which I've got some fuses to put in, bought them, and then this is the ignition switch. Okay, cracking on that stuff. Okay, so I've just done this section here, so from the positive, that post on my bulkhead with a wire going to a fuse box. So I've just mounted a small fuse box here. So from the positive here, it's got an 80 amp main fuse there and a 30 amp secondary fuse there. So go back to the wiring diagram. So the 80 amp there, that goes to the alternator, so that's for the alternator output, and this 30 amp here goes to the ignition switch. So I think I'm going to do this section now from the fuse to the ignition switch. So this wire going from a positive to the ignition switch should already exist as part of the standard mini wiring loom. So coming up to here, so this is the mini wiring loom. So here is the original ignition switch, which I've got here. So there will be a wire which is going from the ignition switch all the way to here, which is the starter solenoid, which that point there is being used as a positive point, because obviously the battery's in the boot, so that goes to the starter solenoid, and then that point there, which is on that side of the solenoid, is then used to power certain things. So I'm going to, I think, reuse that end, which is a brown wire. So I'm going to reuse that, I think, because it's already in place in the Mini, and repurpose it as my wire here. So cracking with that. Okay, I'm over at the engine bay. So what I've got here is the original starter solenoid, which I believe a standard minute is mounted around here somewhere. I can't remember now, it took it off so long. So it's an externally mounted solenoid, so most modern cars, like the engine, the solenoid is actually next to the star, but in this case it was mounted here against this sheet metal. So like I was saying a minute ago, this terminal here, which has got a direct connection to the battery, is used as a takeoff point to power other things in the car. So looking at the gauge, there's a lot of brown wires, but looking at the wiring diagram and the gauge, I'm thinking that one there, that thick one, that is what's going to the alternator, and this one here is what would go to the ignition switch. So this is the one I'm going to unpick from this wiring loom, I think, and then connect that to my new fuse box. That way my ignition switch on switching on will get power from the battery. Okay, let's get cracking. I think it's worthwhile just mentioning, if you're going to do what I'm doing and trying to reuse some of the mini wiring with the Nissan engine, because obviously the two different engines, two different amounts of current depending on the wire, so it's good just to, you know, check the wire that you're using in terms of gauge and how that amps is going to pull. So I found out this white and black wire from the existing Micra is a 14 gauge wire. Okay, and I'm over here, peeled back from the existing loom, the same wire coming from the ignition switch as per the existing mini wiring loom, and I've got my wire gauge thingy here. So where's 14? I have just checked this, so the fuck, oh, I'm on the wrong side. Oh, stupid units. There we go. There's 14 there. So you want to check it on that gap there, which I've done. So this is also a 14 gauge wire. The original Micra one was also a 14 gauge wire. So I can reuse it. It's always good to just to do that check if you're doing an engine conversion, I think. Okay, look, that's done. So I've now taken that that wire from the ignition switch, or rather what would have been from the old mini solenoid, to this point on the starter motor now. So, and that's going to ignition switch. So that'll now, once I've got the battery in the boot and it's charged up, will give 12 volts to the ignition switch through this fuse, which is as per the Micra wiring diagram. Okay, so next bit is I'm going to do this. So when the ignition switch is in the start position, it'll give 12 volts to this, to the starter motor solenoid, which obviously closes the circuit and allows the main power line here there to start the starter. So I'm going to do this bit now, which maybe I might be able to do the same and reuse the existing mini wiring for that. So I'll have a look. Okay, so I've located the original mini starter solenoid trigger wire here. So I'm going to feed it down there and pick up the new Nissan Micra starter motor starter motor solenoid. But I'm not sure. There's my light. I'm not sure there's enough length on it. I mean, it does reach, but I can't route it how I want to, because obviously I want it to be quite neat and tidy, and I want it to be bunched up with all the rest of the wiring inside here, and then only dip down where it needs to keep the engine bay nice and tidy. So I think I'll connect it to the starter motor solenoid for now, but I think I might change this wire for a longer piece so I can route it properly. But this should do for now. Okay, so that's all the starting wiring done. Just finished the trigger wire to the starter motor solenoid. Ground's done, power to the engine bay is done, so should be everything. I've reinstalled the ignition switch, so this should be everything needed for the engine to be able to crank over, assuming I've done everything correctly. So let's give it a go. Yeah, boy. Good stuff. So I'll leave it here for this episode. In the next one, I'm going to do the alternator wiring, I think, and then start looking at some of the making sure the body wiring is still good. So stuff that powers the lights, indicators, stuff like that. Make sure it's got a good power now. Once that's all sorted, and then once that's done, we'll be back onto the ECU and the wire loom. Thanks for watching.